Welcome to the second video of Unit 6, Ancient Rome from City-State to Empire. This second video is about the Roman Republic, which stretches from 509 to 27 BC, and as we saw in the video of section 1, is the second period of the history of ancient Rome between the monarchy and the empire. The Republic, the first section is about the political system and its institutions, and we have to take into account the concept of republic. The first thing we have to remember is that it is a system of government in which power is held by a person elected by the citizens for a limited period of time. For example, we can distinguish between a republic and a monarchy because of the election and the period of time, even though we saw that Romans elected the kings as well. It is only held by a person. In this case, we are going to see that it's not really the case, but this idea of limitation of time is going to be very important for the development of Roman history. Res publica, the Latin word, means the public affairs. That is, the important thing is the public thing, is the common stuff, the shared stuff, not just the particular interest of one. Senatus populusque Romanus. This is SPQR, the famous motto, or motto in Spanish is lema, the famous motto of the Roman Republic, which you are going to see probably in many banners, in many flags. Even if you go to the city of Rome, it still stands today. But it also, and as a reminder, it is something that appears in our favorite comic book, Asterix and Obelix. One of the catching sentences of Asterix and Obelix is "Stan locos estos romanos," which in Italian it is translated as "Sono pazzi questi romani," SPQR. If you see in the image I have chosen here of the Italian version of the comic book, it even reflects the Latin type of font. Senatus populusque Romanus means the Senate and the people of Rome, which are the most important political institutions in the Roman Republic. How was power shared among in the Republic among the different institutions? We are going to have a Senate. We are going to have magistrates, which are going to be the consuls. The most important ones are the consuls, and then the assemblies of citizens, which are called comitia. The Latin word is the one from which our Spanish word comicios come from. The Senate is the most important institution of the Roman Republic. Here we have a picture of the Senate as they imagine it in the 19th century, even though it wasn't really like that. And it was composed by 300 members that were former magistrates. What does former mean? They used to be magistrates, that is, they had positions of responsibility in the Republic, mostly in the city of Rome. The functions of the Senate was legislative, mostly making the laws, controlling the army, deciding about foreign policy. These two mean that they decided if they had to invade or attack or defend from other peoples, and then also they had a religious role for directing worships. The magistrates, as we saw in John Green's video at the beginning, 2 months ago, were very important because they carried out government duties, and they were two because they control each other's actions. That is, they had veto power over the actions of the other consul. Veto power means that they could forbid any the decisions of the people. What were the roles of these consuls? They had an executive function. That is, they carried out the government and army. They were the leaders of the armies, and they served on 1-year terms. That is, it is not like current legislatures of 4 years, but 1 year. What did they want by imposing a 1-year term? Stopping the abuses that were suffered under the monarchy, that is, avoiding long interest in power. The assemblies of citizens, thirdly, was made of all Roman citizens. The concept of citizens is going to change during the Republic, as we are going to see, and then over the Empire. And the functions of these assemblies were voting the laws and electing some of the magistrates. Why do I say that the social classes are going to change? Mostly because they are two basic social classes, the patricians and the plebeians, as well as the slaves, which were an underclass that were considered possessions, not people. And the patricians were a minority which had political and economic power, while the plebeians were a majority with no political rights. These plebeians are going to fight in the so-called conflict of the orders between 494 to 287 BCE, that is 5th to 3rd centuries BCE, and they fought over political rights, over political participation. What they obtained was a plebeian tribune, that is a magistrate which presided the assemblies of the plebis, that is of the plebeians, and the ediles. They also could access to being magistrates. They had the right of choosing consuls, and they had some social rights, such as the abolition of slavery for accumulating debts. So that last concept might sound a little alien to you guys, but if you accumulated too much debt, you had to become somebody's slave. The territorial expansion of Rome, 2.3, was massive. We saw yesterday how a small city-state in the central of the Italian peninsula expanded across the Mediterranean, and this expansion happened mostly during the Republic, even though they reached the maximum expansion at the beginning of the 2nd century AD during the Empire. It came from a city-state to a multinational power. The first of the expansions of Rome in the 4th and 3rd centuries were over the Italian peninsula. From 700 to 500, they expanded across the area of Rome itself, reaching the mouth of River Tiber. But then we see how by the end of the 3rd century BC, they had conquered most of the whole Italian peninsula, and they have included even conquered the islands of Sardinia, Corsica, Sardinia, and Sicily. How did they get to conquer most of the Mediterranean in this period? We have seen that the territorial expansion was relatively slow from the 5th to 3rd centuries, but there was a conflict called the Punic Wars. It is a succession of conflicts from 264 to 146 BC, in which Rome is going to collide with Carthage, which was an empire founded in northern Africa around the city of Carthage in modern-day Tunisia, which was based on trade. These trading interests collided in the island of Sicily, and it led to the First Punic War, which ended not long after that, and eventually the Third Punic War ended with the destruction of the very city of Carthage, which cannot really be found in a map any longer. The most important of the conflicts of the Punic Wars was the Second Punic Wars, that is super famous because of the appearance of Hannibal and his Elephant Wars, as John Green famously said. These were the domains of both Rome and Carthage. As you can see, Carthage controlled the southern Iberian Peninsula and northern Africa, while Rome controlled mostly the Italian Peninsula and these three islands in the Mediterranean Sea. What happened was that Hannibal wanted to revenge the defeat of his dad in the First Punic War, and sent an expedition, sailed over to Carthago Nova, modern-day Cartagena, attacked Saguntum in the province of Castellon, and then went all over the Mediterranean coast, getting some of Rome's enemies on the way, like Gauls and some more peoples, crossed the Alps with the elephants. This is a depiction of how that tremendous passage would have been, also from the 18th, 19th century, went over and almost conquered the city of Rome. There was a famous battle at Cannae in which they defeated the Roman legions, but Scipio Africanus, the Roman leader, decided that the best decision they could do was attacking Carthage itself. So he commanded the navy to Carthage, making Hannibal to go back to the area where they were defeated at the Battle of Zama. The Eastern Mediterranean, on the other hand, was conquered also in this late from the 2nd century BCE onwards, and it began with the control of over Macedon and Greece in 146 BCE. Macedonia became a Roman province, having control of most Greece. And then, Syria was also conquered, but then the Roman Civil War at the end of their republic that we are going to mention in 2.4 meant that the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty and the death of Cleopatra and her Roman lover Mark Antony when they suicide, and Octavian, the first Roman emperor, took control over that civilization. Therefore, what we have seen is the massive evolution of a small city-state into a multinational empire. When we, as you can remember from John Green's video, was Rome an empire before becoming an empire? Yes, because they conquered mostly the Iberian Peninsula, some areas in North Africa, Greece, and area of Syria, Egypt. That is what we know as an empire. The end of the Republic, finally, the crisis of the 1st century BCE, was due to several reasons. The first of them, there were social conflicts, some conflicts in the city of Rome and in the Italian peninsula, which led to internal instability. And in situations of instability, power was granted to army generals, in some case dictators, in some case they seized power by themselves, and these generals fought for power. This sort of political problems led to great instability. And the end of this republic is marked by the appearance of the first triumvirate from 60 to 53 BCE, in which Julius Caesar, Pompey, and Crassus shared power. That led to the so-called Great Roman Civil War, that in which in 48 BCE was relatively ended when Julius Caesar was named both dictator and consul. Julius Caesar, the famous figure, was not therefore an emperor, was dictator and consul, was not an emperor as, for example, it is pictured in the Asterix comic books, but on March 15th, 44 BCE, on the Idus of March, he visited the Senate where this happened. Ahora! 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 That was the sad end of Julius Caesar in the Senate, which led to a situation of turmoil, of crisis, of conflict, and the appearance of the second triumvirate. Triumvirate means, by the way, the power of three. This second triumvirate was formed by Octavian, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, which led to a civil war. Lepidus was the first one falling, and Mark Antony and Octavian finally fought in Greece. There was a naval battle. Mark Antony got the help of Cleopatra, but they were defeated. Octavian was proclaimed the first emperor in 27 BCE, and that meant the end of the Roman Republic. Thanks for watching.